The events of Thunderbolts may have been destructive to Earth, not because of Sentry, but because the Void may have awakened an even more dangerous MCU entity that could debut in Doctor Strange. 3. Wrapping up Phase 5, Thunderbolts presented one of the most powerful characters in the whole franchise. As Sentry, Bob Reynolds can defeat all the new Avengers, and presumably most of the regular Avengers, without throwing the first proper punch. Worse still is the Void, which can transport any living being to its own realm. As Thunderbolts' final battle suggests, there's little anyone can do inside the Void, but convince Bob Reynolds to return to the real world and stop empowering his dark alter ego. The new Avengers manage to stop the Void from wreaking havoc in New York, but whoever reawakens the Void next may not be so lucky. The Void, in turn, may have awakened something even bigger. The Void's MCU twist could connect Sentry's dark alter ego. The Void in Marvel's comics is an evil, ancient entity that often takes the shape of an anthropomorphic demon, while the MCU's version represents Robert Reynolds' trauma and mental health struggles. U's version is a more metaphysical representation of Robert Reynolds' trauma and mental health struggles. Unlike its comic book counterpart, the MCU's Void doesn't attack its victims with dark energy or physical blows, but instead traps them in a loop of their darkest memories. The Void's MCU reinvention makes it more akin to Marvel's Nightmare, ruler of the nightmare world. Since the MCU's Void is the embodiment of everything a person regrets, it might come from the same source as Nightmare, who embodies everything a person fears. In the comics, the nightmare world is a realm that exists inside the dream dimension, where the unconscious minds of all sentient beings project their fears and nightmares. Its ruler, Nightmare, often seeks to extend his realm over all reality, turning every into a waking terror. Nightmare feeds off these fears, often manipulating individuals during sleep to grow stronger or to drive them into madness. Since the MCU's Void is the embodiment of everything a person regrets, it might come from the same source as Nightmare, who embodies everything a person fears. The connection between a being of infinite power plagued by intrusive nightmares and a villain who feeds on those very nightmares is narratively rich. This link would also allow the MCU to introduce Nightmare organically before a possible confrontation with Doctor Strange in Doctor Strange. 3. Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange has presumably faced countless magical threats since he learned magic. Yet, Nightmare hasn't even been mentioned, despite him being one of Strange's longest recurring enemies in the comics. That said, Marvel Studios has flirted with Nightmare's introduction several times. Director Scott Derrickson initially intended for Nightmare to be Doctor Strange's main villain. However, Kevin Feige shot down the idea, as Derrickson revealed in an interview with Empire. But Nightmare's debut was only postponed. A few years later, Nightmare was in Scott Derrickson's early plans for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but creative differences led to Derrickson. As departure, and the sequel pivoted toward Scarlet Witch and her multiversal threat under Sam Raimi's direction, leaving Nightmare on the cutting room floor. Still, some details related to Nightmare may have remained. For example, the concept that dreams are only trips to other universes may have been a leftover from Derrickson's drafts. After the Void briefly consumed New York in Thunderbolts, Nightmare may finally have a solid reason to make his first-ever MCU appearance. The Void brought hundreds or thousands of humans to its realm of regret. Nightmare may have felt a sudden neighboring realm, which might inspire him to investigate Earth and attempt to claim it after the Void couldn't. In Doctor Strange 3, Nightmare's realm could work very similarly to Thunderbolts' Void. Similarly to his comic book counterpart, Lou Pullman's Sentry possesses such immense power that he can end almost any conflict within seconds, as confirmed by Thunderbolts' post-credits scene, which shows that Bob Reynolds now avoids using his abilities to keep the Void at bay. Using his abilities in order to keep the Void at bay, making him a regular human character indefinitely. Even if the Void didn't return, Sentry could defeat most MCU villains and overshadow most MCU heroes. One viable solution to this problem would be to allow Sentry to reach his full potential in an alternate dimension such as Nightmare's nightmare world. In Doctor Strange 3, Sentry could accompany Strange into the dream dimension to contain its ruler. Within such a surreal metaphysical setting, Sentry would be free to display his near-omnipotent abilities without causing irreversible damage to Earth. There, Sentry's battle against Nightmare could be as destructive or as abstract as Marvel desires. In the Nightmare world, Sentry could be forced to confront the root of his trauma in the form of his biggest fears, manifested through Nightmare's reality. The Nightmare world is an ideal place for Bob to face his inner demons in literal form. A supporting role alongside Doctor Strange in an eventual Doctor Strange 3 could mark the beginning of Sentry's path to healing, as Bob needs to separate himself from the void, or perhaps even destroy it. Sentry's supporting role in Doctor Strange 3 could be a natural evolution of Scarlet Witch's villain turn. Scarlet Witch's villain turn Doctor Strange may get another chance to help a fellow hero find the light in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Stephen Strange failed to bring Wanda Maximoff back to the path of heroism. Despite his efforts, Wanda's grief and corruption by the Darkhold pushed her further into villainy. This failure marked a personal defeat for Strange and reinforced the recurring theme that a hero can't always save everyone. In Doctor Strange 3, Stephen Strange could get another chance to help a fellow hero, as Sentry and his void alter ego could be key to defeating Nightmare. In return, Stephen could help Bob Reynolds start his path toward full emotional healing, helping Bob overcome his biggest fears. Afterward, Bob would still need to continue to work on his inner struggles by overcoming his biggest regrets, manifested in the void. If Doctor Strange 3 positions Sentry as a supporting character and Nightmare as the central threat, Stephen Strange's arc could come full circle. After the sacrifices he had to make in Doctor Strange, Avengers, Endgame, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Stephen could finally finish a full battle without major casualties. The Sorcerer's life has been marked by sacrifices, but he deserves at least one adventure where he can claim unanimous victory.